I'm sure everyone thought it would be Albrecht's Eighth Arrays video number 3 for this skill series, but we're going outside the Arcanist tree for Amarasta's Blade Burst. Amarasta's Blade Burst is a main attack replacement skill in Grim Dawn. It is in the same family of abilities that Cadence, Fire Strike, and Savagery also belong to, but Amarasta's Blade Burst is unique in that of all of the main attack replacement abilities, it has a cooldown in between the actual blade bursts. Cadence is on the third hit. Hit, hit, boom. It's like hit, 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 boom, hit, hit, boom, boom, boom. Savagery is every attack, and it builds up over time, and Fire Strike just is you strike with fire. But Amarasta's Blade Burst is you're going to be doing normal attacks, and in every 1.8 seconds or so, you'll have a Blade Burst. This kind of makes Amarasta's Blade Burst unique in that you can do things in-game to speed up how many Blade Bursts you get. Mostly by equipping cooldown reduction. You can actually gear a lot of cooldown reduction and get a lot of Amarasta's Blade Bursts while your character is attacking. But we'll get into that when we talk about the trees later in this video. For now, I'm just going to go over the basics of the skill. So the skill description. Master of Assassins Amarasta, legendary among the Nightblades of her alacrity, developed a technique by which she would unleash a burst of deadly phantasmal blades, which spread out from the point of attack to impale all adjacent foes. So this requires a melee weapon or a two-hand ranged weapon. That's pretty interesting in that you can do it with basically a one-hand dual wielding or two-hand weapon combo, or using a rifle / crossbow. Makes a kind of unique ability in that way, though I don't think I've ever built around the range two-hand setup. So at level 16, the ability has a 1.8 second skill recharge rate. This can be adjusted by your cooldown reduction, both on your items and devotion, and potentially from other classes, say the Arcanist with Star Pact. It hits in a 5 meter target area, deals 165 main hand weapon damage, 326 cold damage, 1464 frostburn damage over 2 seconds, and has a 25% chance to freeze the target for 1 second. Obviously, these numbers are going to be different based on your gearing. I obviously don't have my gear on right now. More or less, you build up cold damage, frostburn damage with every hit, and you will deal weapon damage as well. It hits in a burst area. And has a chance to freeze. So it has one modifier, and that is Lethal Assault. Committed to the offensive, Amarasta would continue her relentless assault following a blade burst to quickly and decisively finish off any surviving adversaries with her imbued weapons. So, Lethal Assault affects all attacks while active. So it has a 4-second duration. It adds on chunks of cold and acid damage, and increases percent cold, acid, frostburn, poison damages, and increases your offensive ability while active. So essentially, I had to equip all my gear there. Lethal Assault, when it pops like that, you'll have the Lethal Assault thing on you. Excuse my procs. And you'll be dealing more damage with Lethal Assault active. Now, I don't actually have this anywhere near 26 out of 16 because this build is kind of a weird one, and I don't have a lot of plus to Amarasta's gear equipped. But as a main hand attack, it can actually deal a lot of damage regardless, and it always has that 25% chance to freeze the target. You'll also add on a lot of flat damage and more percentage damage with this ability. It's really awesome. It actually has, in my opinion, the coolest effect out of all of them. That just blade burst, it just feels good, has a nice sound to it, a good chunky like burst to it. And obviously as a cold damage ability, it does limit itself in how you can combine it with things, though it does have acid damage, which does open up the Witch Hunter combination. So if you're just building a pretty standard Amarasta's character, I think it would be natural to pick up dual blades, because you'll just want to be dealing a whole lot of damage to what's around you. Dual blades and its line will do that. It will have damage types that will cross over with the blade burst, and you get a lot of utility out of it. And yeah, a dual-wielding Blade Burst character would just be pretty sweet, I think. You could also work in Ring of Steel, and if you want, Ring of Frost, since cold damage is probably going to be a focus of your character. If you do go way deep into the Nightblade tree, you can pick up Blade Spirit, since it will mesh with your damage types. Shadow Strike. I mean, you could argue that Shadow Strike is technically better as a main-hand attack replacement ability compared to Amarasta's, but I still like Amarasta's way more. But Shadow Strike would always have a utility if you're building an Amarasta's build, since you'll want to jump into melee with it. And again, it has a lot of damage types that will mesh well with yours. Obviously, in the Nightblade tree, you're going to want to pick up Pneumatic Burst and Shadow Dance. Just a really great defensive combination. Elemental Awakening can apply as well, since you do deal a lot of flat, cold, and frostburn damage with all your attacks. And you'll pretty much have this up all the time. Of course, you're definitely going to want Veil of Shadow and Night's Chill. I mean, Night's Chill just reduces all the resistances you're targeting anyways. Phantasmal Armor is pretty nice to pick up as well. Possibly Anatomy of Murder could be focused on, though I would probably just one-point it and forget it. Obviously, Blade Barrier is a one-point and forget. You could possibly use Blade Trap, but you're in melee anyways, so it doesn't really matter that much. And of course, Merciless Repertoire will increase your damage types straight up. So with the Spellbreaker, we're just going to jump right into the Spellbreaker. Escandra's Elemental Exchange is awesome for Amarasta's Blade Burst. You're just going to dish out more flat elemental damage. Throw in Overload's percent elemental damage and the percent elemental burn damage from Elemental Balance. You got yourself a lot of damage. Electra's Flash Freeze is the natural ability to combine with this. You're going for cold damage anyways. Electra's Flash Freeze hits the whole screen at 12 out of 12. It'll protect you. It'll deal tons of damage. All around a great pick for your character. But also if you have a lot of physical damage, you can pick up Absolute Zero, since you'll be lowering physical resistances. Calidors, you'll probably want to do what I've done on this particular character. 1 point on the Tempest, 1 point in Wrath, and just go. You can, as my weird-ass character here has built, pick up Devastation. But you'll mostly want to, if you're going to do a Spellbreaker combination, in my opinion, you're probably going to want to get to Star Pact, just because it will ding cold and frostburn damage for you, do a little bit of conversion, add more frostburn damage to your attacks, and have the skill cooldown reduction, which is handy for getting more blade bursts. Excuse me, I've shaved off a whole 0.6 seconds on my my Amarastas with this particular setup, and I didn't even have things activated to show off the real numbers. So moving along, obviously Inner Focus you'll pick up, and then you got some 1-pointers. A lot of this can be personal preference as well. You could probably work in Trojan Sky Shards, because it does cross over well with your damage types. All in all, Spellbreaker is a really powerful combination because of its defenses, and you can pretty much build around any attack ability between the two trees. But given that this is an Amarasta's video, I'm pointing out the little synergies with Amarasta's Blade Burst. So another big tree I could see combining with Amarasta's Blade Burst is the Occultist for a Witch Hunter. Specifically because you'll have Blood of Dreeg on top of Pneumatic Burst, and this will give you 2 abilities that you can just tap to keep active for forever, and they'll provide you with a great chunk of defense, in addition to more offensive ability. In this case on Blood of Dreeg, you'll obviously get the bonus acid damage and physical resistance, and the poison acid damage, or resistance on Aspect of the Guardian, and this is where it's more focusing on the lethal assault half of the ability rather than the actual blade burst part of the ability. With Blood of Dreeg, you'll add on more flat acid damage to your attacks, but you'll also add on more percent acid damage. So with the lethal assault component, you'll actually be dishing out a good chunk of poison acid damage. So if you build cold and then poison acid, you'll actually have this weird synergy with these damage types in this particular combination. You can also pick up vulnerability, which reduces all of those resistances for you. You could potentially pick up the Summon Familiar with Storm Spirit to give yourself more cold damage. And also, the weird combination in the setup would be grabbing up Dreeg's Evil Eye and then taking a point in Focused Gaze. The reason you would do this is you're sitting there doing all your melee attacks, bursting, and then you just throw out a Dreeg's at whatever you're fighting, and you'll deal a crap ton of poison damage to it, in addition to that nice chunk of acid damage from both these sections of the ability. And you'll be able to have it, like, duplicate of course, with the sharding effect. From the entire ability, essentially. It can also, you know, stun/terrify things to keep them off you if you so desire. And there's like 3 things that can deal bonus acid damage there. You could also potentially go all the way down to possession in this tree to pick up the % acid damage and % poison damage, and you'll get chaos resistance out of possession. And you'll actually add on chaos damage to these attacks, which would of course make Soleil's Witchfire more viable. I mean, you'll add chaos damage obviously for Soleil's, but the second right section. In addition, getting more vitality damage in there. So you can actually start layering these damage types for Amarastas for you to dish out damage with them, going with acid, cold, then chaos and vitality. So there's a lot of synergizing going on in the Witch Hunter combination for Amarasta's Blade Burst. Now, unfortunately, outside of the Spellbreaker and Witch Hunter combinations, I actually think there's a huge drop-off for synergizing with Amarastas. And really only the Blade Master combination could pick up the slack here. For the Druid combo and the Saboteur combo, I had to think of it for a second there, you do end up with a bit less synergy for that ability. And I probably wouldn't recommend those 2 combinations for Amarastas. There are other better builds, I think, in those classes, in those class combinations. But for the Blade Master, you can pick up Warcry, as per usual, reduce your enemy's health by 33%, and then go ham on them with your Blade Burst. You have another source of running in and pouncing on things, though Shadow Strike is probably a little more preferable for filling that role with the character. Field Command can give you your offensive ability boost and increase your defensive ability and armor, and of course Squad Tactics will increase your attack speed. That doesn't directly affect Amarastas, but you will get more attacks in there. So if you're dual wielding, you can do your Chop Saki stuff with all of your dual wielding procs between the 2 classes and have your Blade Bursts happen. Markovian's Advantage and Zolhan's Technique can also be worked into this particular setup, and these actually mesh well. The thing about Amarastas is you kind of know when it's going to happen. It's going to be about every 1.8 seconds. So when you do that, you'll be able to proc your dual wielding abilities from the Nightblade side, and then your 2 combat procking, basic attack procking abilities in the soldier side. Fighting Spirit can obviously be picked up, and if you're using a shield or a 2-handed weapon, you can use Maynard's Will. If you're using a shield, you can use Overguard. If you're using a shield, you can use Shield Training. But beyond that, you've got access to Military Conditioning and Veterancy and Decorated Soldier. I don't know that I would recommend a Work Blade Arc into the setup build, even with the Clean Sweep ability that adds a cooldown onto it. Nor would I really recommend Force Wave. I mean, obviously you're not using Cadence in this particular setup because you want your Blade Bursts. I guess you could possibly pick up Illyrian's Rage for the % offensive ability. And if you're going for a weird cold internal trauma damage combo. See, this is why I think it really drops off after a certain point beyond the Spellbreaker Witch Hunter combinations, because the synergies just start falling apart after that. For item synergies, there aren't a lot of things to support this build directly, though there is the Nightblade Legendary set that you could probably equip and get a lot of work done with. I almost, for this, recommend just going for a green weapon. The one I'm equipped with right now is a Glacial Malkadar's Dreadblade of Alacrity, which is all about that cold damage and has a lot of attack speed on it. The Ring of Rhymefrost ability is a pretty nice proc to have. And I had this Rhymefrost Rift Scourge Claw of Spellweaving drop one day, which, I mean, is a pretty awesome weapon if I were doing the acid damage variation on this, since it hits the 2 main damage types we're using. Unfortunately, the Spellweaving gave us fire damage worked in there instead of more cold damage, but that's fine. Otherwise, we ended up with a pretty solid weapon to use here. Ice Scorn Talons do provide a Spellbreaker benefit for this particular build, giving them +2 to Overload and to Lethal Assault, and the Ice Nova proc is pretty cool, no pun intended. Death Whisper Leggings, I think, are one of the main things that you could go for building up the actual ability, because you'll get +2 to both, and you'll get free blade bursts. Basically 100% chance on hit. Every 3 seconds you'll do a blade burst that does piercing damage, and some frostburn damage. Also on the Spellbreaker combo is the Frostdread Cuirass. It gives +3 to Amarasta's, +2 to Star Pact, and the Frostdread Presence is a pretty interesting toggled ability. You'll get more flat cold damage from it, and you'll actually have some cold retaliation and freeze retaliation from it as well. Alright, for Devotion, I think the big standard go-to is the Leviathan. You get the flat and % cold damage nodes, a bunch of handy other nodes along the way to the Whirlpool ability, which is all cold damage and frostburn damage, which are your damage types. And there are these 2 nodes on its little horn teeth things, pincers, that give you a lot more frostburn and cold damages. Also, you could potentially, if you're doing the acid version, you could possibly pick up Acid Spray off of the Manticore, since this is kind of a nice little poison ability there. Yeah, Devotion for Amarasta is you pretty much want to go for either cold or poison acid. And it really does depend on your build. Like this guy, he's kind of using a non-standard build, so his Devotion is a little wonky because he's supporting a weird damage combo. But I do also recommend Blizzard. You can attach it either to the Blade Burst or to a different ability if you're trying to get to Blizzard and to Whirlpool, which is possible. You can pick up both abilities and have them equipped on different things. I think the other big acid damage attack, well, it's poison damage in this case, would be Tainted Eruption, but yeah, there's acid damage on the way. So if you're doing the Witch Hunter combination, it might be worth it to come over here and get to Tainted Eruption. And that is a huge burst as well. So you can put it on your Blade Burst. And it will hit like the whole screen for a ton of poison damage, and then you'll be swinging on your acid damage as well, so it's not an insignificant source of damage to hit enemies with. I don't really think there's anything in the Blade Master combo that stands out aside from that stuff as well. Devotion is pretty much stick to your damage types with this character and try to build around them. Alrighty, so that was my Amarasta's Blade Burst skill video. I'm going to point out one thing in this outro. I said that there is a drop-off between synergies with the trees after Spellbreaker, Witch Hunter, and Blade Master. Now, I'm not saying you can't make those work with this ability. I think you can make any ability work with any class combination in this game. I'm just saying it gets a little more difficult after those 3. If you wanted to build, say, a Fire-Cold character, and you went with Saboteur, I think it'd be entirely possible to base it around Amarasta's Blade Burst, work in something like Flame Touched, pick up a weapon that supports it. There are prefix-suffix combos that support fire and cold together, and there are weapons that are based around fire and cold together as well, like the Spellfire Wand. So you'll be able to get a good core of those 2 damage types, and then maybe you're someone who's blade bursting around while throwing grenades. I think it's entirely possible to do that. You'll just have to work for it a bit more with those weird combinations of things compared to a Spellbreaker who can just pretty much do whatever they want in those 2 class combinations. I mean, the guy I've been running, the guy that's in like all the background footage in this video, is running Cold Aether. So there are a couple items that support that weird damage combination, but he pretty much is running the cold damage from Amarastas and Electras with like Devastation and the Arcane Bombs from Devotion. So you can go a little weird with your builds. And there's nothing, even what I say, that is written in stone when it comes to these class combinations and these abilities. So I think I've pretty much covered Amarasta's Blade Burst. Thanks for watching, everyone. Please leave a comment below. Tell me what you think of these videos and how they're going. Also, please leave a like and subscribe if you like what's going on with this channel right now. It helps out a lot. So thanks for watching, everyone, and I will hopefully see you next time.